Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you all. Very active winter weather starting off here this week, and especially over the weekend in the east. And that's just the beginning of what's going to be a super active weather pattern as winter is certainly on the way in and certainly not on the way out anytime soon. So here's a look at what is coming here in the next couple of weeks. We're looking at the potential for feet of snow to come in multiple storms that are coming out of the western out of the Pacific and then across the West and right through the southern and eastern United States. And behind that, we're starting to see some signs of a piece of the polar vortex coming down, which is going to bring a lot colder weather down towards the middle and second part of the month of January. Now that we're putting down the snow on the ground, we're laying the foundation for what's going to be a colder weather pattern coming up here. A big shift from this time last year in the central and eastern United States when we talked about not really a huge snow drought, except in the mid-Atlantic and South, but certainly a lack of sustained cold. And I think we're starting to finally see the groundwork for that to happen. So I want to take you guys to the worldwide satellite here. And we're just going to look here at the Pacific and the US so you can kind of see some of the features we're tracking here. And let me get my pen out and show you guys where the storms are lined up. We have one storm exiting stage right that produced a little bit of mountain snow this morning. We've got a bit of a storm moving through the Great Lakes and Northeast, some light snow with that. But the next storm system to watch is here in the Southwest, and that is going to track through the South here at the end of the week and then up the East Coast. Let me make this more transparent here. Here's what we're going to do. Sorry about that. All right. So we see this next feature here, and this is likely to take enough of a favorable track to bring some cold air down with it here and produce some winter weather across portions of the mid-south into the northeast here as we head towards this weekend. This will be our first significant snow for some here in the northeast in maybe up to 2 winters. But behind this storm system, we've got another one lined up behind it that is going to be moving in, and this is going to be a bigger storm system that produces a wider swath of heavier rain, heavier precipitation, and severe weather, as well as on the cold side, significant snow. And then behind that, another storm here likely to move in behind it. So the barrage of storms is going to continue here over the next couple of weeks. And we see on the water vapor imagery our storm that is wrapping up around Arizona set to move in with cold air settling in north and east of it in the northeast, setting the stage for what will be a heavy wet snow for the interior northeast here over the weekend. Then the storm behind it moving into the west is going to drop farther south, and that one's going to take more of a cut up towards the Great Lakes. And because of that, it's actually going to strengthen into a more powerful storm than this first one early next week. And that's going to bring a lot of water with it, a lot of wind, and potentially some severe weather as well to the south. Here's a look at the GFS operational model from Pivotal Weather. You can see our first storm doesn't look like a lot, but we do have some snow in the forecast here by tomorrow morning over parts of Kansas, northern Oklahoma, and even northern Arkansas, right through the Ozarks region. And then it's going to kind of fade and turn into more of a southern branch feature. But there's also some cold air that's just going to sneak down here through New England into the eastern slopes of the Appalachians Friday night. And when that cold air gets all the way down and we see the moisture running up and over it, we start to see frozen precipitation. That's this pink here. That indicates the threat for some freezing rain. And it's going to be in the Western Carolinas into Southwest Virginia here before daybreak on Saturday. And then as this moisture spreads up the coast, we see it turning more into just a cold rain for the mid-Atlantic region, but near the Mason-Dixon line into the higher elevations, north and west of 95, we're talking about significant snow. So there's going to be an area that does get hit here with some heavy, wet snow. It's not going to be a major, long-lasting storm, but it's going to be an impactful storm here on Saturday in the mid-Atlantic region, and then especially Saturday night across parts of the Northeast and into Sunday over central and southern New England, and even parts of Maine are going to be in for significant snow. Southern New Brunswick, Nova Scotia will see snow out of this here Sunday night into early Monday before this storm exits stage right. So it is a nor'easter. It's not going to be a massive blizzard or anything of that stretch, but it will be a nor'easter that produces coastal flooding, heavy snow for portions of the Northeast, especially New England and southern Canada or Southeast Canada, and colder air to follow it. Now, the next storm behind it wraps up very quickly. This is Monday afternoon, Monday night, and this one is going to take more of a track inland west of the Appalachians. So warmer air coming up the East Coast, and that means a lot of rain coming on top of this fresh snowpack we're talking about. So flooding will be a threat. Severe weather looks to be a threat down south here early next week, and a heavy wet snow for somebody here on the northwest side of that. And that could be somewhere in North Texas or Oklahoma. Could be across Missouri or Arkansas, maybe even Western Tennessee. But as we see the storm tracking up towards Ontario, it does look like the Great Lakes, especially the upper Great Lakes and into portions of Eastern Canada are going to get hit pretty hard. And on the front end of this, before it goes to rain, there could be a heavy amount of wet snow over portions of New England and the interior Northeast. And this will come down at heavier rates than the storm we're dealing with this weekend. But wait, there's more. Behind this big storm, we're seeing another active pattern across the southern U.S. and a storm towards next weekend that will produce cold rain down south, but heavy snow all the way into southern Arizona and northwestern Mexico. And this is the precursor for what's going to be a much colder outbreak moving in towards the middle of January. And this is the GFS, just one run, but you can see how the isobars are super packed. That's these solid white lines. And we see this piece of the polar vortex set to follow behind it. Now we're bringing a very cold air mass in over an area that's gotten a lot of snow over the next 2 weeks. And that's going to bring a dramatic drop in temperatures at some point here towards the middle and second part of January. So here's a look at the European model. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but you can see, at least for the weekend, things are pretty much in agreement now between the GFS and Euro. They weren't yesterday, but now they are. Low pressure, that's going to slowly track just south of Long Island, just south of the islands here Saturday night and deepen. It's not going to be a powerful low, but it'll be strong enough to produce some heavy precipitation. That includes down East Maine as well here on Sunday. This is Sunday at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Then the next storm taking shape here, and the European has snow all the way down towards Wichita Falls, Texas, and Oklahoma City. It's got these pinks indicating mixed precipitation, rain and snow. Probably not ice, but some rain and snow here over portions of Missouri, southeast Iowa. And this mix gets all the way up close to Chicago and Detroit. And then we've got to deal with potentially a huge whiplash snowstorm somewhere here in the Great Lakes region. My guess right now is that it's going to be northern Illinois, eastern Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, and areas north and west of Detroit here on Tuesday. But that can certainly change. We also see on the southern side here a huge amount of rain, likely thunderstorms and severe weather, maybe all the way up into the Carolinas here for Tuesday evening. And heavy rain extends up the eastern seaboard Tuesday night and Wednesday. And this could produce another atmospheric river and more significant amounts of rain and wind and flooding, unfortunately, like we saw here just a few weeks ago in the same area. And then that follows with colder weather after that. So I really do want to move this along pretty quickly. I know my videos have been going long because we just have so much to talk about, but I want to get enough detail in so that everybody doesn't feel left out if possible. But here's a look at total snow on the national blend of models. And you can see it starting to pile up here in the Northeast over the weekend, potentially a foot or more over the interior of New England. And then the next storm is going to produce a wide swath of snow from the western U.S. right on down through the central and southern plains, and then cutting up to the Great Lakes and eastern Canada. And then we see totals just continuing to skyrocket here in the same places here by the end of next weekend. Big snowfall, potentially 5 feet or more over the mountains of the Northwest, potentially 3 feet or more in the Colorado Rockies, 1 to 2 feet around the Great Lakes and the interior of the Northeast as well, with all of these front running shots of cold before things switch over. We'll see quite a bit of snow, and we're going to very quickly make up this snow deficit that we were in around Christmas time, as many folks go to above average snow cover by the time we get to the middle of the month. Here's a look at the NAM showing this potential snowfall coming this weekend. And generally speaking, the models agree. The totals are a little different, but 6 to 12 inches across the interior parts of Pennsylvania, eastern West Virginia, right on up into the northern Hudson Valley and right into central and southern portions of Maine, as well as New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts. So potentially some big snow, especially the northwest suburbs of Boston, getting north of New York City. Now, the I-95 corridor will get some snow, but I think primarily we're talking rain at this point. This is a shift in the thinking from a couple days ago when it looked like the track was just a little farther south. For those of you in the big cities, we're going to have to wait on this one. This is not your big snowstorm. Doesn't mean you won't have impactful weather. It just means this is not your snowstorm. So looking at the west here, we see multiple storms moving in. Big storm for the West Coast this weekend. Lots of rain dropping down all the way in the southern Cal by Sunday morning. And then another storm moving into the Northwest here on next Monday and Tuesday. Big snows for the mountains. And take a look at this cold getting ready to follow here around this time next week, around the 11th. Big time cold dropping down from Western Canada into portions of the high plains and the northern Rockies. And that's going to continue. And this one here next weekend could produce some snow not far from LA and San Diego in those higher elevations. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Vegas looks like it's going to see potentially some snow. Same with Phoenix, but it may be elevational dependent as this cold comes down and we see yet another big storm into the plains. Here's a look at the plains in central United States. Gulf Coast is going to get multiple waves of heavy rain and potential severe weather. We're not going to see a lot out of this storm. We may see some snow on the Oklahoma-Kansas border. That's enough to cause some problems here tomorrow. But after that, it looks like the next one's the bigger storm for this area, and that one cuts up towards the Great Lakes. GFS says close to Chicago, close to St. Louis, but we're going to have to see. European says bigger potential. But the cold follows. We see more storms. So every 2 to 3 days, we have another one to track. And it's not going to quiet down anytime soon. Then the cold weather comes here after the 15th, and it's going to be pretty noticeable here. So get ready for that. GFS on the East Coast. Here comes our next storm. Some heavy rain, maybe severe weather on the Gulf Coast Friday into early Saturday. Then we're looking at snow to rain here in the Northeast Saturday afternoon, especially Saturday night. And then that pulls away slowly here from New England. We're still dealing with some snow, even some mountain snows and lake effect enhanced snow, or lake enhanced snow. Sorry, let me get that out for you guys here on Sunday night into early Monday. Then the next one comes, and there'll be some front end ice here. That's the pink colors, but the heavier snow in blue affects central PA before we see the switch over to rain across this area. So a front loaded storm followed by a big push of moisture and warmth coming up the East Coast. Temperatures climb quickly, and this is going to be what we call an atmospheric river, one that's going to produce substantial heavy rainfall, some flooding, and some strong wind with it here Tuesday night and early on Wednesday. Some heavy snow over the interior of New England and Canada, and then another storm system set to move in, and this one's going to bring a lot of rain down south. Just a really nasty setup for next weekend. Seems like a lot of weekends have had nasty weather. That is certainly not the exception here, but now we're seeing more storms in the interim between those during the middle of the weeks. So every 2 to 3 days, we're dealing with yet another storm. Total precipitation from the NAM model, or I'm sorry, the European model shows just a massive amount of water getting dumped on the southern and eastern United States in the next 10 days, potentially up to a foot of rain somewhere here along the central and eastern Gulf Coast states and into the Carolinas and up the East Coast, potentially several inches, as well as for the coastal Northwest. Big time moisture coming. It's going to cause a lot of problems. Snowfall here. Whoops. Here's the trends from the European of where our heavy snow showed up. And it looked a lot more promising in yesterday's runs than today's. But this is still going to be a pretty decent sized snowstorm here over the interior of the Northeast. This is the latest European. You can see the totals start climbing over parts of West Virginia, Western Maryland, Central PA, and then northeastward. I'm sorry, my graphic cuts off for those of you north of Concord, New Hampshire, but definitely the potential to see a foot of snow somewhere here across the interior of New England. Boston, we see pretty good agreement in the ensemble members here, about 7 to 8 inches of snow, but potentially some spots could pick up more. And there are some ensembles that show more even for Boston Logan. So keep that in mind. However, when you get farther down to New York City, we see potentially about 4 to 5 inches of snow on the European, which is not bad for NYC. But if you get to Long Island, Staten Island, and on south, that number drops off pretty significantly where the warmer air will be in place. Philly, on the other hand, may not get much out of this, maybe about an inch or so before a switch over to rain. And then DC, about the same, maybe a quick inch before going to rain. Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Avoca, looking at potentially 7 to 8 inches of snow here. And then the other threat's going to be ice. And let me back that up for you guys here. We're going to see freezing rain starting across the southern Appalachians and foothills here before daybreak on Saturday. And then that threat climbs quickly as things get very icy around 7 in the morning on Saturday. South of Asheville around Brevard and Hendersonville up to Hickory, just north and west of the Triad could see significant ice out of this. Roanoke, even Charlottesville, right on up here into the Shenandoah Valley. Looks like primarily Saturday morning from Western Virginia on down, and then midday to afternoon Saturday, farther up I-81 and right on up into the Shenandoah Valley. And then this will wind down here by Saturday evening. Here's a look at the central United States. And we see a few inches coming from this storm and then light snows across the Ohio Valley. Not going to be much to talk about south of I-70, unfortunately, if you want to see that snow. The next one's got more potential, but it's tracking up towards northern Oklahoma, right on up into eastern Kansas, northern central Missouri, right on up into the western Great Lakes. Less of a threat for Detroit and Toledo than, say, Chicago or South Bend, and especially northern Michigan. And this is a blend of the models. Some models show a lot more, but it's a little too soon to try to make that call with this being 5 to 6 days away. but there's more coming behind it. We see another potential storm by next weekend, Friday and Saturday, and then more after that. So we'll definitely be talking about more. Wichita could see about 4 inches from this storm, then another 4 to 6 from the next, although some ensemble members showing quite a bit more. Kansas City, kind of the same deal, maybe an inch or so from this, not a big deal, but the next storm for Kansas City could be more substantial, with some ensemble members showing maybe potentially a foot, although the average is going to be about half that. And then Chicago O'Hare, very little out of this storm, but the next storm comes Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night, bringing potentially 6 to 12 inches of snow for O'Hare, and then more potential storms coming after that. And again, there's going to be a bigger spread once we get past the 5 days. And this is Grand Rapids. You can see potentially significant snowfall close to 10 inches. Not a huge storm potential yet, but we do see some ensembles that do show more than a foot falling. And the reason why is just a very active southern jet branch that shifts northward here with time. So we're going to have severe weather coming out of these next couple of features in the southern U.S. This is Monday night. Big time winds aloft, bringing in moisture off the Gulf. And excuse me, as we head into Tuesday, this could produce severe weather over the southeast, including North Florida here on Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday evening. Lots of wind energy with it. And then the barrage continues, although we'll see less of a defined storm coming later next week. Next weekend, though, we'll have to keep an eye on yet another storm that shifts farther north, and then the cold air follows after that. Marginal risk for severe weather, but it does include some tornadoes here along the Louisiana Gulf Coast tomorrow, all the way over into Western Florida. As we head to Saturday, a marginal risk for severe weather across southeastern Georgia, much of the Florida Peninsula, all the way down to Alligator Alley. I think Tampa Bay needs to watch this on Saturday. Then we get a break Sunday, and then Monday, our next storm, I think, could produce more of a widespread regional outbreak of severe weather, and that does include some tornadoes from southeast Texas into central Louisiana, central Mississippi, southern Alabama, and western Florida, with that threat shifting on Tuesday into the same spots. Maybe some tornadoes and damaging winds across the Florida Panhandle, South Georgia, southeastern Alabama, and the central, or I should say the northern half to 2/3 of the Florida Peninsula. And this could shift up the southeast coast as well, all the way up to, say, Wilmington and Jacksonville, North Carolina. Finally, let me get past that. Rainfall totals real fast. I got to move on. I'm sorry, folks. I'm really trying to make these videos shorter, but the weather's not allowing that. But we see potentially significant rain down south, and over the next 10 days, the potential to see not a lot in central and west Texas, but quite a bit here over the southern plains, Mississippi Valley, maybe locally up to 8 inches of rain near southeast Louisiana. The rest of the southeast is going to be very wet as well, especially next week's storm, potentially widespread 3 to 6 inch totals, with more coming next weekend. That is not looking good at all for us. And then in the northeast, we're going to see quite a bit coming up the east coast as well, especially New Jersey, eastern PA, and across much of New England. We, again, are going to have wet weather here over the next couple of weeks, just continuing the trend we've seen from the second half of 2023. Winds also going to be a big story here coming up here. This weekend, we'll see wind gusts over 40 miles per hour on the Jersey Shore and across southeastern New England. But next week's storm looks to have more substantial wind with it, with potentially gusts getting over 60 miles per hour for the near shore waters, more for the offshore waters. And I think Maine could get hit really hard out of this again here by next Tuesday night. So be ready for that. And then we're going to have to get ready for a piece of the polar vortex dropping down. You see it here over central Canada around this time next week. And parts of that are going to drop south into the northern Dakotas and then across the Great Lakes here the following week. So we're going to see a lot colder weather coming. The timing on it uncertain, but I do think it's definitely coming. You can see these are temperature departures, and the colder colors indicate colder temperatures. The warmer ones indicate milder air. But take a look at this amount of cold coming in about a week to Western Canada. Not sure how exactly it plays out, but we do see it coming to the west. We do see it coming to the plains by next weekend, and eventually some of that should shift south and east. And again, this is just one model, but you get a pretty good feel here that by the middle and second half of January, we're going to see more Arctic air coming down here. And tough to say if we even see a repeat of right before Christmas last year, but I think some of the elements are there at this point to see that kind of cold coming down. We're just going to have to wait and see, though, but it is definitely coming. So thank you all so much for your time today. I hope you have a blessed day. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. I really do appreciate y'all. This is something that I truly give all the glory to God who's given me this gift to do. I know science and religion don't always go hand in hand, but I know God put me on earth here to be a scientist, to share weather effectively with you all. I truly believe that's my calling. I'm happy to pray for you all, and I do want to leave you with just a really important verse to me that I think we all need to understand. And that is, those of us who do believe in God are certainly going to reap the blessings. Romans 8:28, Paul tells the church of Rome that, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. And my mantra this year is that I'm going to be too blessed to be stressed. And I pray that's your situation as well, no matter what you believe. There's a lot of stress out there, but every day is a blessing from God. And those who believe in him are going to feel that fruit, that are they're going to see the fruit that God gives us. He gave his son Jesus to die on the cross for us to live eternally. And there are blessings every day, and we can bless each other. And I want to bless you in many ways. So if you have any prayer requests, I am happy to pray for you. I hope you all have a wonderful Thursday, and I'll catch you again tomorrow morning. See you then.